At his own wedding, a millionaire has an unexpected encounter. Intrigued, he decides to dig deeper. The truth hits him hard with a mix of emotions. After discovering what's going on, he faces an impossible choice. Before you discover this emotional story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more surprising tales. The ballroom of the Grand Palace Hotel glowed with the opulence characteristic of high society events in Boston. Crystals sparkled on the immense chandeliers hanging from the ornate ceiling, reflecting light in myriad colors onto the impeccably dressed guests. The air was infused with the subtle aroma of exotic flowers, carefully selected to adorn each table and corner of the space. It was the perfect setting for what should have been the happiest day in the life of Ryan Matthews, heir to a real estate empire and anxious groom. Ryan, a 35-year-old man, tall and handsome, with penetrating green eyes and carefully combed brown hair, adjusted the tie of his custom-made Armani tuxedo. His fingers trembled slightly, betraying the nervousness he tried to hide behind a rehearsed smile. As he watched the guests arriving, an uncomfortable feeling grew in his chest, a mixture of anxiety and an inexplicable emptiness that he couldn't name. "Is everything okay, darling?" The melodious voice of Chloe, his fiancée, brought him back to reality. She was the personification of beauty and elegance, with her Vera Wang wedding dress that perfectly embraced her curves. Her blue eyes sparkled with excitement, and her long blonde hair was arranged in an elaborate updo that enhanced her delicate face. Ryan forced a smile. "Of course, my love. Just a little nervous, that's normal, isn't it?" Chloe laughed softly, adjusting the groom's lapel. "Completely normal. But don't worry, it will be perfect. After all, we spent a fortune on this wedding." Chloe's words, although spoken with affection, caused a twinge of discomfort in Ryan. It was true they had spent an exorbitant amount on this event, more than many people would earn in a lifetime. This made him think about how his life had changed in recent years. As Chloe moved away to greet more guests, Ryan allowed himself to wander to the less illuminated corners of the ballroom. His eyes scanned the crowd of familiar faces, influential politicians, powerful businessmen, celebrities, all there to witness the union of two of the wealthiest families in Boston. However, instead of feeling proud, Ryan felt strangely out of place. His thoughts took him back to a time not so distant, when life was simpler. He remembered his first apartment, a cramped but cozy studio where he spent nights studying to become an architect. He recalled improvised dinners with friends, carefree laughter, dreams that seemed so big yet so attainable. Back then, money was scarce, but there was a wealth of a different kind, of experiences, genuine connections, pure aspirations. Ryan wondered at exactly what point this simplicity had been exchanged for the ostentation that now surrounded him. A waiter passed by offering glasses of champagne, and Ryan took one, drinking a long sip. The bubbling liquid went down his throat, but did not alleviate the sense of discomfort consuming him. "Ryan, my son." The deep voice of his father, Arthur Matthews, pulled him from his reverie. Arthur was the image of success, tall, imposing, with grey hair that gave him an air of distinction. His eyes, the same intense green as his son's, shone with pride. "This is your big day, you must be on cloud nine." Ryan forced another smile. "Of course, Dad. It's a unique moment." Arthur patted his son on the back. "And how it is. Look around. You, everyone who is anyone is here. This wedding isn't just a union of love, it's a consolidation of power. Matthews Enterprises has never been stronger." His father's words weighed on Ryan. Was that what his marriage meant? A consolidation of power. When had his dreams of building revolutionary buildings, of creating spaces that improved people's lives, transformed into mere business strategies? "Excuse me, Dad. I need to check something with the event organizer." Ryan moved, away, feeling suffocated by the crowd, the artificial smiles, the weight of expectations. As he walked through the ballroom, his eyes caught a movement in the service area. A woman, dressed in the discreet uniform of the cleaning staff, passed near him carrying a tray. For a moment their gazes met, and the world seemed to freeze. Those eyes, Ryan knew them. He knew every nuance, every expression they could convey. It was a face he hadn't seen in years, but one he had never really forgotten. Melissa. The shock paralyzed him. Melissa, his ex-girlfriend from college days, was there, working at his wedding. But there was something more, something that made his heart race even faster. She was visibly pregnant. Melissa seemed equally surprised to see him, her eyes widening in recognition before quickly looking away. She quickened her pace, disappearing into the crowd of guests. Ryan stood there stunned as the party continued around him. The music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, everything seemed distant, as if he were submerged. His mind was filled with questions. What was Melissa doing there? Why was she working as a staff member at an event? And that pregnancy, whose child was it? He tried to compose himself, forcing himself back to the reality of the moment. It was his wedding day after all. Hundreds of people were there to celebrate his union with Chloe. He couldn't let himself be shaken by ghosts from the past. But as he walked back to the center of the ballroom, where Chloe awaited him with a radiant smile, Ryan knew that something fundamental had changed. The sight of Melissa, pregnant and working in conditions so different from his own, had awakened something in him, a mixture of guilt, curiosity, and a feeling he dared not name. The rest of the ceremony passed like a blur to Ryan. He mechanically repeated his vows, danced the nuptial waltz without really being present, smiled for the photos without the smile reaching his eyes. His mind was elsewhere, reliving memories of a past that seemed so distant and at the same time so vivid. He remembered the days at architecture school when he and Melissa would spend entire nights discussing their projects, dreaming about the future. Melissa with her free spirit and contagious passion for sustainable architecture. She challenged him, inspired him, made him want to be a better version of himself. As he watched Chloe animatedly chatting with some guests, Ryan couldn't help but compare. Chloe was beautiful, sophisticated, and shared the same world of luxury and privilege as he did. But there was a spark, a deeper connection that he missed. The party continued into the night, but for Ryan, each minute seemed like an eternity. He found himself constantly looking toward the service area, hoping to glimpse Melissa again, but she did not reappear. When finally the last guests left and he found himself alone with Chloe in their honeymoon suite, Ryan felt the weight of his choices as never before. Lying next to his now wife, who slept peacefully, he fixed his gaze on the ceiling, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. What had happened to Melissa in the years that had passed? How had she arrived at this situation? And more importantly, what did this mean for him, for his carefully planned life? Ryan knew he couldn't simply ignore what he had seen. The image of Melissa, pregnant and working at his wedding, had planted a seed of restlessness in his heart. A seed that, he sensed, would grow and change the course of his life in ways he could not yet imagine. With these tumultuous thoughts, Ryan finally succumbed to a restless sleep, his subconscious filled with images of the past and uncertain visions of the future. The day that should have marked the beginning of a new phase in his life had, ironically, reopened a chapter he thought he had left behind. And so, amidst the luxury and opulence of his dream wedding, Ryan found himself on the threshold of a journey that would test not only his love, but his most fundamental values and the very essence of who he was and who he wished to be. The days following the wedding were a whirlwind for Ryan. Between thanking guests, organizing gifts, and preparing for the honeymoon, he barely had time to breathe. However, behind the rehearsed smile and polite responses, his mind kept returning to that brief moment in the ballroom, the instant when his eyes met Melissa's. On a sunny morning, while Chloe was busy with the final details before their trip, Ryan found himself alone in his office in the penthouse. Looking through the panoramic window that offered a stunning view of Boston, he wondered how his life had reached this point. The luxury surrounding him now seemed more like a golden cage than a symbol of success. Without thinking too much, Ryan picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. After a few rings, a familiar voice answered. "Hello? Peter, it's Ryan." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before Peter responded, his voice a mixture of surprise and caution. Ryan, wow, how long has it been? How many years? Ryan felt the weight of the question. How long had it really been since he'd spoken to his best friend from college? I know. Look, I need to talk to you. Can we meet? Peter hesitated for a moment. Sure, man. How about that cafe near campus? It still exists, you know. A nostalgic smile formed on Ryan's lips. Jorge's Cafe, seriously? I thought it would have closed years ago. Well, old Jorge is tougher than he looks. Meet you there. In an hour. Perfect. Thanks, Peter. Hanging up the phone, Ryan felt a mixture of anxiety and relief. He knew that Peter was possibly the only person who could help him understand what was happening, and perhaps the only one who could give him news about Melissa. An hour later, Ryan entered Jorge's Cafe, a modest but welcoming establishment that seemed to have stopped in time. The smell of fresh coffee and warm cheese bread hit him like a wave of nostalgia. For a moment, he saw himself back in his student days, discussing projects and dreams until late at night. Peter was already there, sitting at a corner table. Seeing Ryan, he stood up, a hesitant smile on his face. The two embraced, an embrace that carried the weight of years of distance. Man, you look different, Peter commented, looking at Ryan's expensive suit. Ryan laughed uncomfortably, loosening his tie. Yeah, a lot has changed, but you look exactly the same. And it was true. Peter, with his faded jeans and band t-shirt, could easily pass for a college student. His eyes, behind thin-rimmed glasses, still had that spark of curiosity and intelligence that Ryan remembered so well. They sat down, and for a few moments stayed in silence, as if trying to measure the distance the years had created between them. So, Peter began, breaking the silence, what brings you back to the world of mortals? I read about your wedding in the papers. Seems like it was quite an event. Ryan felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Well, not exactly about the wedding, but Peter, I saw Melissa. Peter's face turned serious. Melissa? Where? At my wedding, Ryan replied, his voice almost a whisper. She was there working as part of the cleaning staff, and she's pregnant, Peter. Peter let out a long sigh, leaning back in his chair. My God, Ryan, that's complicated. Did you know? I mean, do you still have contact with her? Peter hesitated before answering. Yes, we still talk from time to time. She's been through tough times, Ryan. After you broke up, well, things weren't easy for her. Ryan felt a pang of guilt. What happened? Look, I don't know if I should be the one to tell you this, but after you left to take over your family business, Melissa was devastated. She tried to move on, got a job at an architecture firm, was doing amazing sustainable housing projects. But then, Peter paused as if searching for the right words. Ryan leaned forward, anxious. Then her father got sick, cancer. Melissa dropped everything to take care of him, spent all her savings on treatment, but it didn't help. After that, she had trouble getting back into the market. You know how our field is, being out for a while can be fatal for a career. Ryan felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. The image of Melissa, strong and determined, reduced to working temporary jobs, haunted him. And the pregnancy? He asked, fearing the answer. Peter shook his head. That's something you'll have to ask her, Ryan. It's not my story to tell. Ryan nodded, understanding. He was silent for a few moments, absorbing everything he had heard. Finally, he looked at Peter, his eyes full of newfound determination. I need to talk to her, Peter. I need to do something. Peter studied him for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. Ryan, you just got married. Are you sure you want to open this door? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Ryan knew that Peter was right to question his intentions. After all, what did he hope to achieve by reconnecting with Melissa now? I don't know, Peter, Ryan finally admitted. I just know I can't pretend I didn't see her, that I don't know what's going on. I need to do what's right. Peter sighed again. And what exactly is right in this situation, Ryan? You have a new life now, a wife. Melissa has moved on. In her own way, maybe it's best to leave things as they are. Peter's words were sensible, Ryan knew that. But something inside him rebelled against the idea of simply ignoring the situation. I can't, Peter. I can't just turn my back. Not again. Peter watched him for a long moment before finally giving in. All right, I'll give you her contact info. But Ryan, please think carefully about what you're doing. Don't hurt anyone else in this story. Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As Peter wrote down Melissa's number on a napkin, Ryan found himself thinking about how his life had changed in just a few days. The wedding that should have been the pinnacle of his social ascent now seemed like a turning point for something completely different. Leaving the cafe, Ryan walked through the familiar streets of the university district. Every corner, every building brought memories of a simpler time, when his dreams were bigger than his material ambitions. He wondered at exactly what point he had lost sight of what really mattered. Back at his penthouse apartment, Ryan found Chloe excited about the final preparations for the honeymoon. She talked enthusiastically about the paradise beaches that awaited them, the exclusive restaurants, the luxurious experiences. Ryan tried to match her enthusiasm, but his mind was distant, trapped by the piece of paper in his pocket with Melissa's number. That night, while Chloe slept, Ryan stood on the balcony, looking at the illuminated city below. The contrast between his world of privilege and the reality Melissa was living could not be more stark. He found himself imagining what it would be like if he had made different choices, if he had remained faithful to the ideals and dreams of his youth. With trembling hands, he took out his cell phone and the number Peter had given him. His finger hovered over the dial button, indecision consuming him. Calling Melissa meant opening a door that perhaps could no longer be closed. It meant questioning everything he had built in recent years. But the image of Melissa, pregnant and working in precarious conditions, wouldn't leave him. The guilt, the curiosity, and something deeper, a feeling he dared not name, drove him on. With a deep sigh, Ryan finally pressed the dial button. As the phone rang, his heart beat so hard he could hear it. And then, after what seemed like an eternity, a familiar voice answered. Hello? Ryan felt his throat close up. For a moment he couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the emotion of hearing Melissa's voice after so many years. Hello? The voice repeated, now with a hint of irritation. Melissa? Ryan finally managed to say, his voice barely more than a whisper. It's Ryan. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan could only imagine the surprise and possibly the anger that Melissa was feeling at that moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold and controlled. What do you want, Ryan? The coldness in her voice hit him like a slap, but Ryan knew he deserved it. I saw you at my wedding, working. I needed to talk to you to know if everything's okay, if you need anything. I don't need anything from you. Melissa interrupted him, her voice laden with contained emotion. I'm perfectly fine. And congratulations. On your wedding. Ryan felt the sarcasm in her last words. Melissa, please, I just want to help. You're pregnant. If there's anything I can do. What can you do? Melissa laughed, a bitter sound that cut Ryan like a knife. You've already done enough, Ryan. Live your perfect life and leave me in peace. It's not that simple, Ryan insisted, feeling that he was losing control of the situation. We have a history, Melissa. I care about you. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Melissa spoke again, her voice was laden with a sadness that Ryan had never heard before. You cared about me once, Ryan, but that was a long time ago. Things have changed. We've changed. Please don't complicate things further. Before Ryan could respond, the line went dead. Melissa had hung up. Ryan stood there, the phone still pressed against his ear, feeling more lost than ever. The conversation hadn't gone as he'd hoped, but what exactly had he been hoping for? Forgiveness? A chance to make things right? He didn't even know for sure what he wanted. Going back inside the apartment, Ryan looked at Chloe, sleeping peacefully. His current life, everything he had built in recent years, suddenly seemed fragile and superficial. Melissa's voice, laden with hurt and resentment, echoed in his mind, reminding him of everything he had left behind. As the night wore on, Ryan remained awake, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. He knew he had opened a door that could no longer be closed. Whatever came next, one thing was certain: his life would never be the same again. The sun had barely risen when Ryan got up, his eyes heavy from a night of poor sleep. Beside him, Chloe still slept deeply, unaware of the turmoil stirring her. New husband's heart. Careful not to wake her, Ryan headed to his office, gently closing the door behind him. Seated in his leather armchair, he watched the city awakening below. The first rays of sun painted the skyscrapers gold, creating a surreal contrast with the unease consuming him inside. The conversation with Melissa the night before had turned his world upside down, bringing to the surface feelings and memories he thought he had buried long ago. Ryan picked up his phone, hesitant. Part of him wanted to call Melissa again, to try to explain himself better, to offer help in some way. But he knew it would be futile. The coldness in her voice still echoed. In his ears, a painful reminder of how much things had changed. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Ryan, are you there?" Chloe's voice sounded concerned. "Come in, sweetheart," he answered, trying to sound as normal as possible. Chloe entered, still wearing her silk robe. Her blue eyes studied Ryan with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Is everything okay? You left the bed so early?" Ryan forced a smile. "Just a bit of insomnia. I thought I'd go for a run in the park, clear my head before heading to the office." Chloe nodded, still half asleep. "Good idea. Don't be too long, okay? I want us to have lunch together today." "Of course," Ryan replied, feeling a pang of guilt. Another lie to add to the list. As he prepared to leave, Ryan looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. The man staring back at him seemed like a stranger. Deep, dark circles marked his eyes, and there was a tension in his shoulders that he couldn't disguise. For a moment, he considered giving up on the meeting, going back to bed and pretending none of this was happening. But the image of Melissa, pregnant and working in precarious conditions, wouldn't leave him. He needed to do this. He needed to face his past and the consequences of his choices. With one last look at Chloe, who had gone back to sleep, Ryan left the apartment. The journey to Central Park had never seemed so long. Each traffic light, each corner seemed like a new opportunity to give up, to turn back. When he finally arrived at the park, it was just 5 minutes before 10 a.m. His heart was beating so hard he was sure everyone around him could hear it. Walking toward the lake, Ryan spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench. Melissa. Even from a distance, even with the advanced pregnancy, she still had that aura that had always attracted him. Her long dark hair was tied in a casual ponytail, and she wore a simple dress that accentuated her pregnant belly. For a moment, Ryan was paralyzed, unable to move. All the speech he had mentally rehearsed during the journey seemed to have evaporated. What would he say? How could he explain his feelings, his intentions? It was Melissa who spotted him first. Their eyes met across the distance, and Ryan saw a mixture of emotions pass over her face: surprise, hurt, and something else he couldn't identify. With hesitant steps, Ryan approached the bench. Each step seemed to take him not only toward Melissa, but toward an uncertain future, a path he wasn't sure he was ready to tread. "Hi, Melissa," he said softly when he finally got close enough. Melissa stared at him for a long moment before responding, her voice calm but laden with emotion. "Hello. Ryan, it's been a long time." And with those simple words, Ryan knew his life was about to change forever. The past and present collided on that park bench. And the future? Well, the future was a blank page, waiting to be written. The silence between Ryan and Melissa seemed to stretch for an eternity. The park buzz around them, children laughing, birds singing, the gentle rustle of the breeze in the trees, created a surreal contrast with the palpable tension between the two. Ryan swallowed hard, his eyes running over Melissa's familiar face. Time had been kind to her. Despite the evident tiredness in her eyes, she still maintained that natural beauty that had always captivated him. Her pregnancy, now impossible to hide, enveloped her in an almost ethereal aura. "You look beautiful," Ryan finally managed to say, the words coming out almost as a whisper. Melissa let out a tired sigh. "Why are you here, Ryan? What do you want?" The coldness in her voice hit him like a slap. Ryan sat down beside her on the bench, maintaining a respectful distance. I needed to see you. To know if you're okay, if you need anything," he replied, feeling how inadequate his words sounded. Melissa laughed, a bitter sound that cut the air between them. "Now you're concerned, after all these years?" Ryan felt the weight of guilt intensify. "Melissa, I know I made mistakes, many mistakes, but when I saw you at my wedding, working in those conditions, pregnant, I couldn't just ignore it." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "And what did you expect, Ryan? That I'd be living a life of luxury? That I would have magically overcome everything? No, Ryan began, but was interrupted. "You have no idea what I went through after we broke up," Melissa continued, her voice trembling slightly. "While you were climbing the ladder, taking over your family's business, I was struggling to keep my dreams alive. And when I was finally succeeding, when my sustainable architecture projects were gaining recognition..." She paused, taking a deep breath to compose herself. Ryan waited, feeling that anything he said at that moment would only make things worse. "My father got sick," Melissa continued, her voice now softer. "Cancer. I dropped everything to take care of him, spent every penny I had on treatment, but..." Ryan felt his heart tighten. He knew through Peter about Melissa's father's illness, but hearing it from her, seeing the pain in her eyes, was different. "I'm so sorry, Melissa," he said genuinely. "I should have been there for you." Melissa stared at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Yes, you should have, but you were too busy building your empire, weren't you?" Silence fell over them again. Ryan felt the weight of his choices, of every decision that had taken him away from Melissa, from his youthful ideals. "And now?" he asked softly, his eyes turning to Melissa's belly. Melissa instinctively placed her hand over her stomach, a protective gesture. "Now, I move forward. I do what I can to survive, to give my child a decent life." "The father," Ryan began hesitantly. "Not in the picture," Melissa cut in, her voice firm. "And before you ask, no, it's not yours." Ryan nodded, feeling a confusing mixture of relief and disappointment. He knew he had no right to feel that way. "Melissa, I want to help," he said, leaning a bit closer to her. "Please, let me do something, anything." Melissa studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decipher his true intentions. "Why, Ryan? Why now? Is it guilt? Or do you just want to clear your conscience before heading off on your honeymoon?" That words hit him like a punch. Ryan found himself without an answer, because honestly, he didn't know exactly why himself. Was it guilt? Certainly. But there was something more, something he couldn't name. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I just know that I can't move forward knowing that you're going through hardship, not when I could do something about it." Melissa sighed, suddenly looking very tired. "Ryan, you have a new life now, a wife, a future ahead of you. What exactly do you think you can do?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Ryan found himself thinking about Chloe, about his recent marriage, about the plans they had made together, and then about Melissa, about everything they had shared, about the dreams they had built together. "I can offer you a job," he said finally, "at my company. Something in the area of sustainable architecture. You were always brilliant at that, Melissa. It would be an opportunity to resume your career." Melissa looked at him with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "A job? At your company? Ryan, are you listening to yourself?" "I know it sounds crazy," he admitted, "but think about it. It would be a chance to do what you love, to have financial stability for you and your child." "And work side by side with you every day?" Melissa questioned, her voice laden with skepticism. "With your wife probably wondering who the pregnant ex-girlfriend is who suddenly appeared in your lives?" Ryan inwardly cringed. He hadn't thought about the implications, about the complexity this decision would bring for all involved. I didn't think about that," he admitted. Clearly, Melissa replied, but her voice had lost some of its earlier harshness. Ryan, I appreciate the intention, really, but I can't accept. It would be too complicated. Ryan nodded slowly, understanding. I understand. But Melissa, please let me help in some way. It doesn't have to be a job. Maybe I could put you in touch with some people in the field, give some references. Melissa seemed to consider the offer for a moment. That could work, she said finally. But Ryan, I need you to understand something. I'm not looking to rekindle anything from the past. I can't. Her words hit him with force, even though he knew they were true and necessary. I know, he replied softly. That's not what I'm offering. I just want to do what's right. Melissa studied him for another moment before nodding. Okay, I accept. Your help with the contacts, but Ryan, after this, that we need to go our separate ways for everyone's good. Ryan felt a lump form in his throat, but he knew she was right. I understand, and I respect your decision. They sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of everything that was said and unsaid hanging between them. Finally, Melissa stood up, one hand on her back to help with the weight of the pregnancy. I need to go, she said. I have a shift at the cafe in a little while. Ryan stood up too, fighting the urge to help her. Of course, I'll get in touch with some people today, I promise. Melissa nodded. Thank you, Ryan, really. As she turned to leave, Ryan felt a sudden impulse. Melissa, he called, making her stop and look back. I'm sorry. For everything. Her eyes softened for a moment. I know, Ryan, I know. And with that she was gone, walking slowly along the park path. Ryan watched her leave, feeling as if a part of him was leaving with her. As he returned to his car, Ryan found himself in a whirlwind of emotions. Relief at having finally spoken with Melissa, guilt for everything she had gone through, concern about the future, and buried beneath it all a feeling he dared not name, an echo of something he thought he had left in the past. Sitting in his luxury car, Ryan looked at the clock. It was almost noon. Chloe would be waiting for him for lunch. His new life, his present, awaited him. But as he started the engine, he couldn't help but think about Melissa, about his past and about the path that had led him here. With a deep sigh, Ryan put the car in motion. He had promises to keep, both to Melissa and to Chloe. And as he drove back to the city, he wondered if he would be able to honor both without hurting anyone in the process. The future, which until a few days ago had seemed so clear and defined, now presented itself as a foggy and uncertain path. Ryan knew that the decisions he made in the coming weeks would shape not only his destiny, but that of everyone around him. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure if he was prepared for that responsibility. The journey back home was a blur for Ryan. The busy streets of Boston passed like a distant scene, while his mind relived every moment of the conversation with Melissa. The weight of the revelations, the promises made, and the emotions awakened consumed him completely. When he finally parked in the garage of his luxury building, Ryan realized he had driven on autopilot, without really paying attention to the road. He remained seated in the car for a few minutes, trying to organize his thoughts and emotions before facing Chloe. The panoramic elevator ascended slowly, each floor passing as if counting down the seconds to an inevitable confrontation. Ryan knew he couldn't hide the truth from Chloe for much longer. The guilt was eating away at him, and he feared that the longer he waited, the worse her reaction would be. Upon entering the apartment, he was greeted by the aroma of freshly prepared food. Chloe was in the kitchen, finishing setting the table for lunch. She looked up when she heard him enter, a smile forming on her lips. Hi, honey, I thought you weren't going to make it in time. How was the run? Ryan felt a knot form in his throat, another lie on the list. It was enlightening, he replied, opting for a half-truth. Chloe studied him for a moment, her smile faltering slightly. Ryan, is everything okay? You seem disturbed. Ryan took a deep breath. It was now or never. Chloe, we need to talk. The serious tone in his voice made Chloe's smile disappear completely. She turned off the heat under the pot that was cooking and turned to face him. "What's going on, Ryan?" He gently guided her to the living room where they sat on the couch. Ryan could feel his heart pounding in his chest, his palms sweating. "Remember when I said I had some things to sort out before the honeymoon?" He began, his voice trembling slightly. Chloe nodded, her eyes fixed on him, a mixture of concern and apprehension in her gaze. "It wasn't exactly about work," Ryan continued. "Actually, it was about someone from my past." He saw Chloe's face, pale, but she remained silent, waiting for him to continue. Ryan then began to tell her everything. About seeing Melissa at the wedding, about the phone call, about the meeting in the park that morning. He talked about Melissa's difficult situation, about the pregnancy, about his desire to help her. As the words flowed, he could see a myriad of emotions passing over Chloe's face: shock, hurt, anger, confusion. When he finally finished, a heavy silence fell over them. Chloe stood up abruptly, walking to the window. She stood with her back to him for long moments, her shoulders visibly tense. "Why didn't you tell me before?" she finally asked, her voice low and controlled. Ryan stood up, taking a hesitant step toward her. I didn't know how. Everything happened so fast, and I was confused, trying to understand my own feelings." Chloe turned to face him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Your feelings? Ryan, we just got married. What kind of feelings could you be having for an ex-girlfriend?" The question hit him like a slap. Ryan found himself struggling to find the right words. "It's not like that, Chloe. I just felt responsible, guilty for everything she went through." "And you think offering her a job at your company is going to solve that?" Chloe questioned, her voice rising slightly. "Did you think about the implications? What people would say?" Ryan lowered his head, feeling the weight of his actions. "I know it was an impulsive idea. I wasn't thinking clearly." Chloe let out a bitter laugh. "Clearly not. Ryan, I understand you want to help, but there are limits. There are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed, especially so early in our marriage." She paused, taking a deep breath as if to calm herself. When she spoke again, her voice was softer but laden with hurt. "What hurts me most is that you hid this from me, that you lied repeatedly. How can I trust you now?" Her words hit him deeply. Ryan felt the full weight of his actions, the damage he had done to the trust that was the foundation of their relationship. "I'm so sorry, Chloe," he said, his voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to do the right thing." Chloe stared at him for long moments, as if trying to decipher something in his eyes. "And what is the right thing, Ryan? Helping your ex-girlfriend at the expense of your marriage?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy and loaded with implications. Ryan found himself without an answer, because honestly, he didn't know. The line between right and wrong, between past and present, had never seemed so blurred. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I just know that I can't turn my back on someone who needs help, especially someone who was so important to me in the past." Chloe closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to process everything. When she opened them again, there was a determination in her gaze that Ryan hadn't seen before. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "If you really want to help, we'll do it together, in a transparent way and with clear boundaries." Ryan looked at her, surprised. You want to help?" Chloe shrugged, a gesture that seemed more resigned than anything else. "I want our marriage, Ryan, and if that means dealing with the ghosts of your past, then so be it. But with one condition." "Anything," Ryan responded promptly. "No jobs at your company, no constant direct contact. We'll find a way to help Melissa that doesn't put our relationship at risk." Ryan nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and admiration for Chloe's strength. "Thank you," he said softly. "I love you, Chloe. You know that, don't you?" Chloe looked at him, a small sad smile forming on her lips. "I know, but sometimes, Ryan, love isn't enough. We need trust, honesty, and mutual respect." She approached him, placing a hand on his face. "I want our marriage to work, really. But you need to be fully committed. No more secrets, no more lies. Can you promise me that?" Ryan covered her hand with his, feeling the weight of the moment. "I promise, Chloe, no more secrets. We'll face this together." They embraced, an embrace that carried the weight of the day's revelations, but also the promise of a new beginning. Ryan knew he had a lot to do to rebuild Chloe's trust, to balance his desire to help Melissa with his commitment to his marriage. As they pulled apart, Chloe wiped away a solitary tear. "I think our lunch has gone cold," she commented, trying to lighten the tension a bit. Ryan smiled slightly. "How about we order a pizza like in the old days?" Chloe nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "Sounds like a good idea." As Chloe went to place the order, Ryan found himself looking out the window at the city stretching below. He knew that the days ahead would be challenging. He would have to navigate carefully between his past and his present, between his obligations and his desires. The phone in his pocket weighed like lead. He still needed to fulfill his promise to Melissa, make the contacts he had promised. But now, with Chloe aware of everything, he knew that each step would have to be carefully thought out and discussed. Ryan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibilities on his shoulders. He had opened a door that could no longer be closed. Now all he could do was move forward, hoping that his decisions would be the right ones, not just for him but for everyone involved. Chloe's voice called him from the kitchen, asking about pizza toppings. Ryan smiled, grateful for this small moment of normalcy amid the chaos. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but with Chloe by his side, perhaps, just maybe, they could make everything work out. As he joined Chloe in the kitchen, Ryan made a silent promise to himself. He would do his best to honor his commitments, both to his past and to his present, and in the process he hoped to rediscover the man he truly wanted to be. The days following the conversation with Chloe were a balancing exercise for Ryan. Every move, every decision seemed loaded with meaning and potential consequences. The apartment, once a refuge of comfort and luxury, now seemed like an emotional minefield, with tense silences and looks laden with unspoken meanings. On a particularly sunny morning, Ryan found himself in his home office, phone in hand, hesitating, before making the call he had promised. Chloe was in the next room and he could hear the soft murmur of the television. Taking a deep breath, he finally dialed the number. "Hello, David. This is Ryan Matthews." The voice on the other end of the line was warm but with a touch of surprise. "Ryan, what a nice surprise. How can I help?" Ryan adjusted himself in his chair, feeling the weight of the conversation he was about to have. "David, I need a favor. I have an extremely talented architect who's looking for an opportunity. I thought maybe you could—" Of course. David interrupted enthusiastically. "Any recommendation from you is welcome. Who is she?" Ryan hesitated for a moment. "Melissa Parker. She has an impressive track record in sustainable projects." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Melissa Parker. The name is familiar. Wasn't she your ex-girlfriend?" "Yes," Ryan completed, feeling uncomfortable. "But that was a long time ago. What's important is that she's really talented and needs an opportunity." David cleared his throat. "I see. Well, I can certainly look at her resume. Have her contact my secretary to schedule an interview." Ryan felt momentary relief. "Thank you, David. This means a lot." After hanging up, Ryan sat for a few moments, absorbing what he had just done. It was a step in the right direction, but he knew there was still a long way to go. Chloe appeared at the door of the office, her eyes questioning. Was that about Melissa? Ryan nodded, feeling grateful for the openness Chloe was showing. "Yes, I spoke with an old colleague about a possible interview for her." Chloe entered the office, sitting in the chair in front of Ryan's desk. "And how do you feel about that?" The question caught Ryan by surprise. He realized he had been so focused on doing the right thing that he had barely stopped to reflect on his own feelings. "I feel relieved, I think," he replied after a moment of reflection. "Like I'm starting to fix something that's been broken for a long time." Chloe studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Ryan, I need you to be completely honest with me. These feelings, are they just guilt and responsibility, or is there something more?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded with implications. Ryan felt his heart race, knowing that his answer could change everything. He began, searching for the right words. I care about Melissa, Chloe. I can't deny that. She was an important part of my life for a long time. But what I feel now is mainly concern and a desire to help. It's not romantic love, if that's what you're asking. Chloe let out a sigh, a mixture of relief and apprehension in her expression. I appreciate your honesty, Ryan, but I need you to understand that this situation is difficult for me too. Seeing my husband so concerned about an ex-girlfriend, it's not easy. Ryan stood up, circling the desk to kneel beside Chloe's chair. He took her hands in his, looking into her eyes. I know, and I'm sorry for putting you in this position. You've been incredibly understanding and strong. I love you, Chloe. You are my present and my future. What I'm doing for Melissa, it's about fixing mistakes from the past, not about rekindling something old. Chloe squeezed his hands back, a small smile forming on her lips. I want to believe that, Ryan. Really. But it will take time to completely rebuild the trust between us. Ryan nodded, understanding. I know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes for that to happen. At that moment, Ryan's phone rang, breaking the intimacy of the moment. He looked at the display and his heart skipped a beat. It was Melissa. Looking at Chloe, he saw the tension return to her eyes. With a sigh, he answered, putting it on speakerphone. Hello, Melissa? Melissa's voice sounded clear through the room. Ryan, sorry to bother you. I received a call from a David about a job interview. Was that you? Ryan exchanged a quick glance with Chloe before answering. Yes, it was. He's an old colleague, the owner of a highly respected architecture firm. I thought it could be a good opportunity for you. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Melissa spoke again, her voice was laden with emotion. I thank you, Ryan. This means a lot. No need to thank me, Ryan replied, feeling Chloe's gaze on him. You deserve this chance, Melissa. I'm sure you'll do very well. Still, thank you. And please thank your wife for me too. I know this situation can't be easy for her. Ryan was surprised by Melissa's words and saw Chloe's eyes widen slightly. I'll pass your thanks along, he replied, exchanging a meaningful look with Chloe. Good luck with the interview, Melissa. After hanging up, a heavy silence fell over the office. Chloe was the first to break it. Well, that was unexpected, she commented, her voice neutral. Ryan nodded, still processing the conversation. Yes, it was. Melissa has always been perceptive. Chloe stood up, walking to the window. When she turned to Ryan, there was a new determination in her eyes. I think we need to talk to her, Ryan, in person. The suggestion took Ryan completely by surprise. You want to meet with Melissa? Chloe nodded. Yes, if we're going to handle this situation, we need to do it openly. No secrets, remember? I think a meeting, the three of us together, can help clarify things and establish clear boundaries. Ryan was momentarily at a loss for words, amazed by the strength and maturity Chloe was demonstrating. Are you sure? He finally asked. I don't want you to feel pressured to do something that makes you uncomfortable. Chloe gave a small smile, though her eyes revealed a complex mixture of emotions. It won't be comfortable, Ryan, but it's necessary. For all of us. Ryan stood up, going to her and hugging her. You're amazing, you know that. I don't know if I'll ever deserve you. Chloe pulled away slightly, looking into his eyes. It's not about deserving, Ryan. It's about choosing every day to do what's right. And now we're choosing to face this together. As they remained embraced, looking out the window at the city below, Ryan felt a mixture of apprehension and hope. The meeting that Chloe was proposing would undoubtedly be one of the most challenging moments they would face. But perhaps, just maybe, it was exactly what everyone needed to move forward. The afternoon was slowly advancing, the sun beginning its descent on the Boston horizon. The shadows lengthened, creating a play of light and darkness that seemed to perfectly reflect the emotional turmoil Ryan was experiencing. As he and Chloe discussed the details of the proposed meeting with Melissa, Ryan couldn't help but feel a pang of anxiety. He knew he was about to enter uncharted territory, where the past and present would collide in a way that could change everything. But looking at Chloe, seeing her strength and determination, Ryan felt a renewed confidence. Whatever the outcome of this meeting, they would face it together. And perhaps in this process, everyone would find a path to healing and a new beginning. The cafe chosen for the meeting was a neutral location, a small establishment in the Cambridge neighborhood, far from Ryan and Chloe's usual social circles. The welcoming atmosphere, with its exposed brick walls and the aroma of freshly ground coffee, strongly contrasted with the tension hanging in the air. Ryan and Chloe arrived first, choosing a discreet table in the corner. Chloe nervously adjusted the strap of her purse, while Ryan couldn't stop looking at the door. The silence between them was palpable, loaded with anxiety and expectation. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Ryan asked for the umpteenth time, his voice low and concerned. Chloe nodded, a small forced smile on her lips. "Yes, I am. We need to face this head-on, Ryan. It's the only way we can move forward." Before Ryan could respond, the cafe door opened. Melissa entered, her gaze scanning the environment until she found the couple. For a moment, she seemed to hesitate, as if considering turning around and leaving. But then, with a deep sigh visible even from a distance, she walked toward the table. Ryan instinctively stood up, a mixture of courtesy and nervousness. Chloe followed him, her face a mask of calm, though her eyes revealed a storm of emotions. "Hello," Melissa said softly, her hand unconsciously resting on her prominent belly. "Thank you for inviting me." Ryan gestured toward the empty chair. "Please sit down. Would you like something to drink?" Melissa shook her head, carefully sitting down. "No, thank you. I've already had my quota of coffee today." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. The three looked at each other, each waiting for the other to start speaking. Finally, it was Chloe who broke the ice. "Melissa," she began, her voice surprisingly firm, "first I want you to know that it was my idea for us to meet like this. I thought it would be important for all of us to have this conversation face to face." Melissa nodded, her eyes moving between Chloe and Ryan. "I appreciate the initiative, and I'm sorry about this whole situation. It was never my intention to cause problems in your marriage." Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "It's not your fault, Melissa. I was the one who complicated things by not being honest from the start." Chloe lightly touched Ryan's arm, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Melissa. "We're here to clarify things and establish some clear boundaries," Chloe continued. "Ryan told me about your situation and about his desire to help. I understand this desire, but I need to make sure we're all on the same page." Melissa looked directly at Chloe, an expression of respect in her eyes. "I admire your strength, Chloe. Many women wouldn't have handled this situation with such grace. I want you to know that I have no intention of interfering in your marriage. What Ryan and I had, that's in the past." Ryan felt a tightness in his chest at Melissa's words, a complex mixture of relief and a twinge of something he dared not name. "I appreciate your honesty," Chloe responded, "and I want you to know that despite the circumstances, I support Ryan's decision to help you. But it needs to be in a way that doesn't compromise our relationship." Melissa nodded emphatically. "Of course, I completely understand. Actually, I was thinking of declining the job offer." Ryan leaned forward, surprised. "What? But why? It's a great opportunity, Melissa." Melissa sighed, running her hand over her belly in an almost unconscious gesture. "It's complicated, Ryan. Yes, it's a great opportunity, but I don't want it to seem like I'm taking advantage of the situation. Besides, with the baby coming, I don't know if I'll be able to take on full-time work so soon." Chloe surprised everyone, including herself, when she spoke. "And if we found a way to make this viable for you, maybe a part-time arrangement initially, or remote work?" Ryan looked at his wife, a mixture of surprise and admiration in his eyes. Melissa seemed equally shocked. You would do that for me?" Melissa asked, her voice breaking with emotion. Chloe took a deep breath before answering. "Look, Melissa, I'm not going to pretend this situation is easy for me. But I also can't ignore that you're going through a difficult time. If we can help in a way that benefits everyone, Why not try? Ryan took Chloe's hand under the table, squeezing it gently in a gesture of gratitude and support. Melissa wiped away a tear that threatened to fall. I don't know what to say, thank you, really. You two are incredible people. The rest of the meeting flowed surprisingly naturally. They discussed possibilities, established clear boundaries, and gradually, the initial tension dissipated. When they finally said goodbye, there was a sense of mutual understanding hanging in the air. On the way back home, Ryan and Chloe remained silent for a few minutes, each absorbing the events of the afternoon. "You were amazing in there," Ryan finally said, looking at Chloe with admiration. "I don't know if I would have had the same strength in your place," Chloe gave a small smile, though her eyes revealed the emotional exhaustion of the meeting. "It wasn't easy, Ryan, it still isn't, but I think we did the right thing today." Ryan nodded, feeling a weight being lifted from his shoulders. "Yes, we did. And I promise, Chloe, that I will honor your trust. I won't do anything that could compromise what we have." Chloe turned to him, her eyes seeking his. "I know, Ryan, that's why I love you, because, despite everything, you always try to do the right thing." As the car advanced through the streets of Boston, Ryan reflected on how his life had changed in the last few weeks. What had begun as a casual encounter at his wedding had transformed into a journey of self-discovery, forgiveness, and growth. He knew that the road ahead would still be challenging. There would be moments of doubt, of jealousy, perhaps even of regret. But looking at Chloe, feeling the strength of the love and trust they shared, Ryan felt for the first time in a long time that he was exactly where he should be. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the Boston sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a new beginning, not just for Melissa, but for all of them. A beginning based on honesty, compassion, and the courage to face the past to build a better future. Ryan took a deep breath, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in weeks. Whatever challenge tomorrow brought, he knew he would face it with Chloe by his side. And that, he realized, was all. That really mattered. The weeks following the meeting at the cafe brought a new dynamic to Ryan and Chloe's life. The apartment, previously tense and silent, now seemed to breathe with renewed energy. Conversations flowed more freely, and gradually the couple rediscovered the complicity that had initially united them. On a sunny Saturday morning, Ryan woke to the aroma of fresh coffee and the soft sound of Chloe humming in the kitchen. He smiled, remembering the early days of dating when scenes like this were common. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Chloe smiled as she saw him enter the kitchen, his hair still disheveled from sleep. "I thought we'd have a special breakfast today." Ryan hugged her from behind, placing a soft kiss on her neck. And what's the occasion?" Chloe turned in his arms, her eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Well, actually, I have some news." Ryan raised an eyebrow, curious. "News? Good or bad?" "Good." "At least I hope you think it's good," Chloe replied, biting her lower lip. "Remember that urban revitalization project I mentioned a few months ago?" Ryan nodded, vaguely remembering Chloe commenting on an ambitious project from her NGO to transform degraded areas of the city into community spaces. "Well," Chloe continued, "we got the funding, and that's not all. They want me to lead the project." Ryan's eyes widened in surprise and pride. "Chloe, that's amazing. Congratulations, my love." He hugged her tightly, spinning her around in the small kitchen. Chloe laughed, but Ryan noticed a hint of hesitation in her voice. "There's one more thing," she said, when he put her back on the ground. "The project, it will require me to travel quite a bit in the coming months, mainly to the south." Ryan felt a tightness in his chest. The idea of Chloe being away for long periods concerned him, especially considering everything they had recently gone through. But he knew how much this project meant to her. For how long? He asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Probably a week per month, at least initially," Chloe replied, carefully studying Ryan's reaction. "I know the timing isn't ideal, with everything that's happened." Ryan gently interrupted her, holding her face between his hands. "Chloe, this is an incredible opportunity for you. Of course I'll miss you, but I'm incredibly proud. You deserve this." Chloe's eyes filled with tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you for understanding. I promise we'll make it work. We can use the time between trips to really reconnect." Ryan smiled, pulling her in for another hug. "I can't wait." As they had coffee, animatedly discussing the project details, Ryan's phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" he answered, frowning. "Ryan, it's Melissa." Ryan felt Chloe freeze beside him, her eyes fixed on him. He put the phone on speakerphone, an automatic gesture of transparency. "Melissa, everything okay? Did something happen?" Melissa's voice sounded agitated. "Sorry to call on a Saturday, but I had the interview with David yesterday and, well, they offered me the job." Ryan and Chloe exchanged surprised looks. "Melissa, that's great. Congratulations," Ryan exclaimed. "Thank you," Melissa replied, but there was a note of concern in her voice. "The problem is, they want me to start on Monday. I know it's very short notice, especially considering my situation, but it's an opportunity I can't pass up." Ryan could hear the internal struggle in Melissa's voice. "I understand your concern, but Melissa, you deserve this chance. I'm sure we can find a way to make it work." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Actually, I was wondering if you know any reliable babysitters. I know it's a lot to ask, but with the baby coming soon and this new job." Ryan looked at Chloe, uncertain about how to proceed. To his surprise, it was Chloe who took the initiative. "Melissa? It's Chloe. Look, I have a friend who works with childcare. I can ask her to contact you if you'd like." The relief in Melissa's voice was palpable. "Really? That would be amazing, Chloe. Thank you so much." After hanging up, Ryan looked at Chloe with admiration. "You continue to surprise me, you know that?" Chloe shrugged, but there was a small smile on her lips. "We're all trying to do the right thing, aren't we? Besides, with my trips approaching, I feel better knowing you'll have less to worry about here." Ryan pulled her close, kissing her softly. "I love you, you know, more than ever." The rest of the day passed in a blur of planning and anticipation. Ryan and Chloe discussed the challenges that would come with their new situations, her trips, Melissa's new job, the changes in their routines. But amid all the uncertainties, there was a palpable feeling of hope and renewal. At night, sitting on the balcony and observing the city lights, Ryan reflected on how his life had changed in such a short time. What had begun as a crisis had transformed into an opportunity for growth, not just for him, but for everyone around him. "What are you thinking about?" Chloe asked, snuggling closer to him. Ryan smiled, embracing her. "About how lucky we are. About how sometimes things need to fall apart a bit so that we can rebuild them even stronger." Chloe nodded, understanding. "You know, for a moment, when everything started, I was afraid we might lose it all. But now I feel like we've gained much more than I ever imagined." Ryan kissed the top of her head, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. "You're right, and I promise, Chloe, that I'll value this every day. I'll work to be the man you deserve, the husband I promised to be." As the couple remained embraced, observing the city below, Ryan felt a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. The challenges to come, Chloe's trips, the new dynamic with Melissa, the changes in their careers, seemed less frightening now. Because he knew that together, they could face anything. The future, which before seemed foggy and uncertain, now shone with possibilities. Ryan knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but for the first time in weeks, he felt truly optimistic. With Chloe by his side and a new perspective on what really mattered in life, he was ready to embrace whatever destiny held in store for them. Night advanced, and with it, the promise of a new dawn. A dawn full of challenges, yes, but also of love, understanding, and the strength that comes from facing adversity together. And for Ryan and Chloe, that was more than enough. It was all they needed. Autumn came to Boston, bringing with it a cool breeze and the promise of change. For Ryan, Chloe, and Melissa, the past few months had been an emotional roller coaster of adaptations. Now, with the leaves changing color outside, their lives also seemed to be entering a new season. Ryan was in his office, reviewing some documents, when his phone vibrated with a message from Chloe. "Just landed. Can't wait to see you and tell you all the news, love you." A smile spread across Ryan's face. Chloe was returning from her third trip to the south, where the urban revitalization project was in full swing. Although the temporary separations were challenging, they had found a rhythm that worked for both of them. Nightly video calls and constant messages kept them connected, and the moments together became even more precious. As he prepared to leave the office, early to pick up Chloe at the airport, Ryan received another message, this time from Melissa. "Ryan, sorry to bother you, but could we talk in person tomorrow? I have some news about work and, well, other things." Ryan felt a twinge of concern. Although things had calmed down considerably in recent months, with Melissa adapting well to the new job and her pregnancy progressing without complications, he still felt responsible for her well-being. "Of course, Melissa. How about we have lunch together? We can meet at that restaurant near your office." The response came quickly. "Perfect, thank you, Ryan." On the way to the airport, Ryan reflected on how the dynamics had changed. The initial tension had given way to mutual understanding among all involved. Chloe, surprisingly, had become a kind of mentor for Melissa, offering advice on work-life balance. And Melissa, in turn, showed genuine respect for Ryan and Chloe's marriage, maintaining clear boundaries in their interactions. The reunion with Chloe at the airport was warm and exciting. As they drove back home, she talked animatedly about the project's progress. "You should have seen it, Ryan," Chloe was saying, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "The community is fully involved. We're transforming not just the physical space, but people's lives." Ryan smiled, feeling proud. "That's amazing, my love. You're making the real difference you've always dreamed of." Chloe took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "You know, amidst all this work, I realized something important." "What?" Ryan asked, curious. "That no matter how rewarding the work, fears the best moment of my day is when I come back to you," she replied, her voice soft. Ryan felt his heart warm at her words. They had been through so much in recent months, and yet their love seemed stronger than ever. Arriving home while Chloe unpacked, Ryan mentioned Melissa's request to meet. "She wants to talk to me tomorrow," he explained. "Seems like she has some news." Chloe paused what she was doing, looking at Ryan with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think everything's okay with her?" Ryan shrugged. "I hope so. She seemed, I don't know, a bit anxious in the message." Chloe approached, hugging him from behind. "Well, whatever it is, I'm sure you'll work it out. You've been a great support for her, Ryan." Ryan turned in the embrace, facing Chloe. "And you've been amazing throughout this whole process. I don't know if many wives would have handled all of this as well as you have." Chloe smiled, a bit melancholic. "I'm not going to lie and say it was easy, but I've learned a lot about myself, about us in this process. And you know what? I think we're stronger because of it." They spent the rest of the night reminiscing about the past few months, laughing at the small changes in their lives, and making plans for the future. When they finally went to sleep, Ryan felt grateful for everything they had overcome together. Next morning, Ryan woke up early, a bit anxious about the meeting with Melissa. He left a loving note for Chloe, who was still sleeping, recovering from jet lag, and left for work. Lunch arrived faster than he expected. Upon entering the restaurant, Ryan spotted Melissa already seated at a corner table. Her 8-month pregnant belly was prominent, and there was an aura of serenity around her that he hadn't seen before. "Hi, Melissa," he greeted, sitting down. "How are you?" Melissa smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "I'm well, Ryan. Actually, I'm great." They placed their orders, and while waiting, Melissa began to speak. "First, I wanted to thank you again. This job, it changed my life. Not just financially, but it gave me a purpose, a direction." Ryan nodded, happy to see the positive impact. "I'm glad to hear that. You deserve it, Melissa." Melissa took a deep breath before continuing. "But that's not the only reason I asked. To talk, Ryan, I met someone." Ryan felt a mixture of surprise and relief. "That's great, Melissa. Who is he?" "His name is Andrew. He's an architect too. We worked together on a project. He's been amazing." understanding about my situation, caring, patient. Ryan could see the glow in Melissa's eyes as she talked about Andrew. It was a glow he recognized, the same he saw in Chloe's eyes. "I'm very happy for you, Melissa, really," Ryan said sincerely. Melissa smiled, but then her expression turned serious. "There's one more thing, Ryan. Andrew received a job offer in Seattle, and he invited me to go with him." Ryan was momentarily speechless. The idea of Melissa moving to another city, taking the baby, was something he hadn't considered. "Wow, that's big," he finally managed to say. "And what do you think about it?" Melissa ran her hand over her belly, a gesture that had become habitual. "I want to go, Ryan. It's a chance for a fresh start for me and for the baby, but I wanted to make sure it's okay with you. I know things between us are complicated, and I don't want you to think I'm running away or depriving you of something." Ryan felt a wave of emotions hit him. Gratitude for Melissa's consideration, a bit of sadness at the idea of not being so present in the baby's life, but mainly a sense that everything was falling into place as it should. "Melissa, if that's what you want, then I fully support you," he said, his voice firm. "You deserve this happiness, this fresh start. And as for the baby, well, there are planes, right? We can stay in touch, make visits." Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Ryan. Your understanding means a lot to me." They continued, talking, discussing the details of the move, the plans for the future. Autumn came to Boston, bringing with it a cool breeze and the promise of changes. For Ryan, Chloe, and Melissa, these changes were not just metaphorical, but deeply real and impactful in their daily lives. Chloe was on her second trip to the South, leading the urban revitalization project. Ryan, alone in the apartment, found himself frequently looking at the phone, anxious for news. The nightly video calls had become a precious ritual, a moment of connection amid the physical distance. On one of these nights, after ending the call with Chloe, Ryan found himself restless. The silence of the apartment, once a refuge, now seemed oppressive. He decided to take a walk in the nearby park, hoping the fresh air would clear his mind. As he walked under the trees that were beginning to lose their leaves, Ryan reflected on the past few weeks. Melissa had started her new job, and from what he knew through brief updates, was adapting well. Chloe's friend Teresa had become Melissa's trusted babysitter, creating an unexpected but welcome support network. Lost in his thoughts, Ryan almost didn't notice the familiar figure sitting on a nearby bench. It was Peter, his old college friend. "Peter?" Ryan called, surprised. Peter looked up from his book, a smile forming on his face. "Ryan? What a coincidence!" The two embraced, the familiarity of years of friendship overcoming the time they had spent apart. "What are you doing here so late?" Ryan asked, sitting beside his friend. Peter shrugged. "Sometimes I come here to read and think. And you? I thought you'd be at home with your wife." Ryan felt a pang of sadness. "Chloe's traveling for work. The apartment gets a little lonely sometimes." Peter nodded, understanding. "I see. And how are things? I heard you've been going through changes." Ryan laughed humorlessly. "News. Travels fast, huh? Yes, the last few weeks have been intense." "Want to talk about it?" Peter offered, his tone gentle and free of judgment. Ryan hesitated for a moment, but soon found himself opening up. He talked about reconnecting with Melissa, the complications in his marriage, the efforts to do the right thing. Peter listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or offering words of support. "You know," Peter said after Ryan finished, "I'm impressed with how you and Chloe are handling all of this. Many couples wouldn't survive such turbulence." Ryan smiled slightly. "Chloe is amazing. Sometimes I wonder if I deserve her." "Hey," Peter gently nudged him, "don't put yourself down. You're doing your part too. Not everyone would have the courage to face the past and try to fix things." Peter's words brought a comfort that Ryan didn't know he needed. For a moment, he felt like the architecture student again, full of dreams and ideals. "Peter," Ryan began hesitantly, "do you think that it's still possible to reconcile professional success with the ideals we had in college. Sometimes I feel like I lost my way somewhere along the road. Peter reflected for a moment before answering. I think it is possible, yes, but it requires awareness and constant effort. It's easy to get lost along the way, but the important thing is to recognize that and seek realignment. Ryan nodded, absorbing his friend's words. You're right. You know, all this drama with Melissa, it made me rethink a lot of things, about who I am, who I want to be. And who do you want to be, Ryan? Peter asked softly. The question hung in the night air, loaded with meaning. Ryan took a deep breath, looking at the stars that dotted the Boston sky. I want to be someone who makes a difference, he finally replied, not just accumulating wealth, but really contributing to something greater. I want to recapture that passion we had for projects that positively impacted people's lives. Peter smiled, placing a hand on Ryan's shoulder. That sounds like the Ryan I knew in college. And you know what? It's never too late to start over. The conversation continued into the night, the two friends reminiscing about old times and discussing possibilities for the future. When they finally said goodbye, Ryan felt lighter, more centered. Returning home, he took out his old sketchbook, long forgotten in a drawer. Flipping through the yellowed pages, Ryan found himself immersed in projects and ideas from the past: sustainable buildings, community spaces, creative solutions for urban problems. Inspired, he began to draw. The hours passed unnoticed as lines and shapes came to life on paper. When the sun began to rise, Ryan had before him the sketch of an ambitious project: a sustainable housing complex that incorporated green spaces, renewable energy, and community areas. His phone vibrated, pulling him from his creative trance. It was a message from Chloe. Good morning, love. Hope you slept well. Can't wait to get back home and hug you. Love you. Ryan smiled, feeling a wave of affection and gratitude. He replied quickly, promising a surprise when she returned. Looking again at his drawings, Ryan felt an excitement he hadn't experienced in years. He knew he had a long road ahead, reconciling his new goals with his current responsibilities. Wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time he felt truly enthusiastic about the future. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made him look at the clock. It was time to prepare for another workday. But today, Ryan knew, would be different. Today he would go to the office with a new purpose, a new vision. As he got ready, Ryan made a silent promise to himself. He would find a way to integrate his renewed ideals with his current position. He would use his influence and resources to make the difference he had always dreamed of making. And most importantly, he would share this journey with Chloe. Together, they would build not just a stronger marriage, but a life with purpose and meaning. With one last look at his sketches, Ryan left the apartment, ready to face the day and the future with renewed determination. The road ahead was still uncertain, but now more than ever he felt prepared to face any challenge that arose. The following weeks brought a renewed energy to Ryan's life. His enthusiasm for the new sustainable housing project was palpable, infecting not only his team at work, but also Chloe, who listened fascinated about his ideas during their nightly video calls. On a sunny Thursday afternoon, Ryan was in his office, immersed in plans and calculations, when his secretary announced an unexpected visit. Mr. Matthews, Ms. Melissa Parker is here to see you. She says it's urgent. Ryan felt his heart race. He hadn't seen Melissa in person since the meeting at the cafe weeks ago. Please, show her in. Moments later, Melissa entered the room. Her pregnancy was now evident, and there was a mixture of anxiety and determination in her eyes. Melissa, Ryan stood to greet her. Is everything okay, the baby? The baby is fine, Melissa quickly reassured him. Actually, I'm here for another reason. Do you have a moment? Ryan nodded, indicating a chair. Of course, sit down. What happened? Melissa took a deep breath before beginning. It's about the job at David's office. They offered me a leadership position on an urban revitalization project. Ryan smiled, genuinely happy with the news. Melissa, that's incredible. Congratulations. But Melissa's expression remained serious. The project is in Miami, Ryan. They want me to move there for at least a year. Ryan's smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of surprise. Oh, that's unexpected. And how do you feel about it? Melissa let out a tired sigh. I'm torn. It's an incredible opportunity, exactly the kind of work I've always dreamed of doing. But with the baby coming, I don't know if I can make this move alone. Ryan processed the information for a moment before responding. I understand your concern, but Melissa, you're one of the most capable people I know. If anyone can handle this, it's you. A small smile formed on Melissa's lips. Thank you, Ryan, but I didn't come here just to vent. I need some advice. What do you think I should do? The question caught Ryan by surprise. He found himself thinking not just as an ex-boyfriend or a friend, but as someone who genuinely cared about Melissa and her child's well-being. Honestly? I think you should accept, he said finally. It's the kind of opportunity that can change your career, give you and the baby the stability you deserve. Melissa studied him for a moment. Even if it means we'll grow even further apart. Ryan felt a tightness in his chest but kept his voice firm. Melissa, what we had was special, but it's part of the past. Your future and your child's future is what matters now. And if this project in Miami can offer that to you, then I think it's worth trying. Tears formed in Melissa's eyes. Thank you, Ryan, for everything. For the job, for the support, for being you. As they continued their conversation, Ryan felt a strange mixture of emotions. Sadness at the idea of Melissa moving away, but also a profound sense of closure. It was as if the final pieces of a puzzle were falling into place, allowing everyone to move forward with their lives. That night, when Chloe called, Ryan shared the news with her. Melissa is moving to Miami, he said, watching his wife's reaction on the screen. Chloe seemed surprised, but not upset. That's a big change. How do you feel about it? Ryan thought for a moment before answering. I feel at peace, actually. I think it's what she needs, a fresh start, and somehow it feels like closure for me too. Chloe smiled, her eyes softening. I'm proud of you, Ryan. You've handled this whole situation with a lot of maturity. We both have, Ryan replied. I don't think I could have done it without you, Chloe. They talked for a while longer about their days, their projects, their future plans. Before hanging up, Chloe asked the question that had been on Ryan's mind as well. Do you think we should do something for Melissa before she leaves? A small farewell party, maybe? Ryan smiled at his wife's generosity. I think that would be wonderful, Chloe. Thank you for suggesting it. The next few days were a flurry of activities. Ryan threw himself into organizing the farewell party for Melissa, while also advancing his sustainable housing project at work. The dual focus kept him busy and fulfilled, a combination he hadn't felt in years. The evening of the party arrived, a small, intimate gathering at a restaurant that Melissa had always loved. Ryan had invited Peter and a few other mutual friends from college days. Chloe, who had returned from her trip the day before, was a gracious host, making everyone feel welcome. As Melissa entered, visibly surprised by the gathering, Ryan felt a surge of emotion. This woman, who had once been the center of his world, was now embarking on a new journey, and somehow he felt privileged to have been a part of her story, even if their paths were now diverging. The night was filled with laughter, stories, and warm wishes for the future. As the party wound down, Ryan found himself standing beside Melissa at the restaurant's balcony, both looking out at the Boston skyline. Thank you for this, Ryan, Melissa said softly. It means a lot. Ryan smiled, glancing back at the room where Chloe was chatting animatedly with Peter. It was Chloe's idea, actually. She wanted you to know how many people care about you. Melissa followed his gaze, a small smile playing on her lips. She's special, Ryan. Don't ever let her go. I don't intend to, Ryan replied, his voice filled with certainty. Melissa turned to him, her eyes serious. You know, when I first saw you at your wedding, I was angry, hurt. But now, I'm grateful. Grateful? Ryan asked, surprised. Yes, Melissa nodded. If you hadn't seen me that day, if all of this hadn't happened, I might never have found the courage to restart my career, to open my heart to Andrew, to truly move forward. Ryan felt a warmth spread through his chest. I'm happy for you, Melissa. Truly, you deserve all the happiness in the world. They stood in companionable silence for a few moments, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Melissa spoke again. Ryan, I want you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter where life takes us, you'll always have a place in my heart. Not as a lover, but as a friend who was there when I needed the most. Ryan felt his eyes moistening. And you in mine, Melissa. Always. Inside, Chloe raised her glass, proposing a toast to Melissa's new adventure. As everyone cheered, Ryan caught his wife's eye across the room. The love and understanding he saw there filled him with a profound sense of gratitude. In that moment, surrounded by friends old and new, Ryan realized that life had come full circle. What had begun as a painful encounter had transformed into a journey of growth, forgiveness, and new beginnings. And as he rejoined the group, raising his own glass in toast, Ryan knew that he had finally found his place in the world, not just as an architect or a businessman, but as a man who had learned the true value of connection, compassion, and courage. The future stretched before them all, bright with possibilities. And for the first time in years, Ryan felt ready to embrace it wholeheartedly. 3 months later, Ryan stood in his office, looking out at the Boston winter landscape. Snow fell gently outside, covering the city in a pristine white blanket. On his desk, plans for the sustainable housing project were spread out, now in its final stages of approval. His phone buzzed with a message from Melissa. She's here. Emily Rose Parker, £7, 3 ounces. Both of us doing well. Sending a picture. Ryan smiled as he opened the photo attachment, a tiny, perfect face wrapped in a pink blanket. He felt a surge of warmth and joy, along with a gentle pang of what might have been. But there was no regret, just a genuine happiness for Melissa and her new beginning. He typed a quick reply. She's beautiful, Melissa. Congratulations, give her a hug from Uncle Ryan. As he put down the phone, the door to his office opened and Chloe walked in, her cheeks flushed from the cold outside. Hey you, she smiled, crossing the room to kiss him. Ready for our lunch date? Ryan wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, mixed with the crisp winter air. Absolutely, but first look at this. Melissa had her baby. He showed her the picture and Chloe's face softened. Oh, she's gorgeous. We should send her something. Already ordered a gift basket, Ryan replied, grabbing his coat. Should. Arrive tomorrow. As they walked out of the building hand in hand, Ryan marveled at how much had changed in just a few months. His relationship with Chloe was stronger than ever, his passion for meaningful architecture rekindled, and a sense of purpose had returned to his life. The urban revitalization project that Chloe was leading had been a resounding success, garnering national attention. Ryan's sustainable housing initiative was moving forward, with groundbreaking scheduled for spring. And Melissa had settled into her new life in Miami, thriving in her role and finding happiness with Andrew. What had started as a moment of crisis, a chance encounter at a wedding, had set in motion a series of events that had ultimately enriched all their lives. It hadn't been easy, and there had been painful moments along the way, but the journey had been worth it. As they walked through the snow-covered streets, Ryan thought about the twists and turns of life, how happiness often comes from the most unexpected places. A glimpse of the past had led him to reevaluate his present, and in doing so, had opened up a future brighter than he could have imagined. "Penny for your thoughts?" Chloe asked, squeezing his hand. Ryan smiled, pulling her closer as snowflakes danced around them. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, how sometimes the detours in life lead us exactly where we need to be." Chloe looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the same contentment he felt. "I like that thought. Here's to detours then." "And to wherever they may lead us," Ryan added, leaning down to kiss her softly. Together, they continued down the snowy street, toward their favorite restaurant, toward their future, a future they would face side by side, stronger for all they had overcome, richer for all they had learned, and ready for whatever life might bring next.